This is Red Ice Radio. From the visible to the obscure. RedIceCreations.com.
Yes, that's correct. Red Ice Radio is what you are listening to. RedIceCreations.com is our website, and we're delighted to have you with us today. My name is Henrik Palmgren, and if you have been following our website for the last year or more, you know that we put focus on many of the Earth changes and space anomalies that have been reported by the media, the alternative press, and individuals on their own blogs, websites, and YouTube channels. Obviously, there's so much that it's practically impossible to keep up with it all, but some of the major stories have been about magnetic north now being on the move. Strange spirals have been appearing over Norway, Australia, Mongolia, New Zealand, and Russia. There have been birds falling out of the sky around the world, heralding some kind of apocalypse. A mirage city mysteriously appeared in China in June. A portal-like light burst bubble or whatever it was seen over Hawaii. And the sun rose 2 days early for our friends up in Greenland. There have been strange plasma light phenomena in Fort Worth, Texas, and many other places as well. Low rumbles and hums are reported. There are also people saying that the sunrise and sunset has shifted, that it's setting more towards the north, and that the quality of the light is different, and some people even claim that the stars are displaced and the moon is consequently also behaving strangely. And then we have the usual strangeness continuing as well. Increased amounts of earthquakes, strange weather patterns, sinkholes have opened up in different places around the globe, and strange bright lights are being reported around the world. And while some of these strange phenomena might be a consequence of technology or experimentation, I don't think it explains everything. And the suggestion is, of course, that something else is going on, and the question is what? Maybe we're making a mistake when we're connecting all of these different phenomena, but they are nonetheless all contributing to the sense of strangeness, that something is going on. And who knows, maybe the strangeness just has begun. John Lash is back with us on the program today to talk about Sophia's correction and what might be the reason then for many of these anomalies. John Lash is a self-educated freelance scholar who combines studies and experimental mysticism to teach directive mythology, that is, the application of myth to life, rather than its mere interpretation. He is a leading exponent of the power of myth to direct individual experience and drive historical events over the long term. He's an expert on sidereal mythology, naked eye astronomy, precession, and the world ages. He also teaches the critique of belief systems. And on metahistory.org, his website, he presents a radical revision of Gnosticism with original commentaries on the Nag Hammadi codices. He also presents the only complete restoration by any scholar of the Sophianic myth of the pagan mysteries, the sacred story of Gaia Sophia, recounting the origin of the Earth and the human species from the galactic core. Stay with us for the next 2 hours for a very intriguing discussion. Welcome back to Red Ice Radio, John Lash. It is great to have you back with us again. It's over a year ago since we talked with you last, and so many things have unfolded. Obviously, so many things have happened, and we have a lineup of interesting things we're going to talk with you about here. But first of all then, John, welcome back. How are you today?
I'm very fine, Henrik. Thank you so much for having me on again. It's a pleasure and a privilege.
Absolutely. It's really good to talk to you. And I wanted to have you back because primarily I got an email from you a few days ago, maybe a week ago now, in terms of something that you termed Sophia's correction. You included a video in the email, and one who took the time to watch it could obviously see some pretty interesting things in regards to, basically spanning from the Western media covering this aspect of the shifting of the magnetic north all the way over to the Inuits of the northern parts around the Arctic regions, talking about primarily the setting and the rising sun, the shifts and the changes that has happened in that. And this is a big topic, obviously. This is a very interesting one. If we go back a little bit more into the news record, so to speak, John, we could bring up this news item from Greenland as well. People might recall stories coming out from Greenland that the sun was actually rising 2 days early And a lot of these different little anomalies connected with the sun, connected with the magnetic field, seems to be kind of, piling up, if you will, John. What is your take on this? Tell us a little bit about this, Sophia's correction.
Well, Sophia's correction is a term taken from the Gnostic writings of Nag Hammadi. It's found in those texts. It's a theme or clue, you might say, that was left to us by the Telestai, who were the ancient seers who directed the mystery schools and the ancient schools of initiation in Europe and the pagan world. And it's a very intriguing clue, Sophia's connection, for a number of reasons. First of all, because the myth of Sophia, the story of the goddess Sophia, that was the centerpiece and guiding vision of the mysteries, is really the only true planetary myth that we have that explains the origin of the Earth and the origin of humanity, and also explains as well the presence of predatory extraterrestrial beings in our world. It explains a great many things. Now, I recovered and restored this myth from my study of the Gnostic materials. I want to point out, going in, that this myth is not my creation. It's not the invention of John Lash, not by a long shot. But I am the only scholar who has completely restored this myth, which I consider to be the directing myth for the human species. And the Gnostics themselves and the ancient seers who developed it also considered it as such. Now, one of the interesting things about this myth, and of course, understand that I mean myth in this sense as a story of power and magic, and a true story presented in a poetic or metaphorical form. I mean myth in the sense of a deeper truth, not in the sense of a fiction or fabrication. I think everyone listening would understand that. Beautiful thing about this myth, Henrik, is that it's an open-ended myth. Now, when you take other myths from any culture, like the myth of Ragnarok, of the Götterdämmerung, or the end of the world myths from Teutonic or Scandinavian mythology, or when you take the biblical myth of creation and the coming of the Messiah and the end of the world, all the myths that you can examine that have come down to us have a prescripted end. But this story about the divine Sophia, who is the earth goddess and is in fact the embodied in the earth, doesn't have an end. It's an open-ended experiment. The myth is an invitation to become involved in a cosmic and supernatural dimension of life and to be conscious agents and participants in the future of the earth itself. This is a tremendous, tremendous concept. And this is where Sophia's correction comes in. Sophia's correction, the word correction, is found in the Nag Hammadi text as the word diorthosis, diorthosis, which scholars translate as correction. But it can also be translated as dual solution or two-form solution. It means the solution or the correction to a problem. And so what is the problem that is described in this Sophianic myth that is due to be corrected? Well, the problem is that the goddess Sophia, as the myth tells us, conceived that there could be a divine experiment with humanity, with our species. And she had a particular idea of how this experiment would go. And the way that we are living now, the place that we find ourselves on Earth currently, is a place in which this divine experiment has gone badly wrong. In other words, I think that even without extensive argument, any person with a kind of common sense and also a feeling of compassion for other human beings would understand that something is very wrong in the way we're living on this planet. Something is very wrong about where civilization has taken us. Something very wrong about the way we do business and the way we treat each other, and the tremendous degree of secrecy and manipulation that permeates our world.
Yeah.
something is telling us that something is really, really wrong here. And one of the beautiful aspects of the Sophianic myth is that it addresses this situation. And Sophia's correction is actually the solution to this situation. But I would add, and I'm very happy that you've chosen that as the theme and title for this interview, because we're going to weave in and out of this theme. This is our master theme. This is our guiding theme. And I just want to say at the outset that the beautiful thing about the correction that humanity can now achieve is that it is a cooperative correction made with the Earth Goddess. It's not something that we as human beings just do on our own. We finally straighten out, figure out what's wrong, figure out where all the secrecy and deception are coming from, and clear things up. Certainly, that's possible. But the beautiful part of the Sophianic myth is it offers us the opportunity to clean up our act and bring humanity back into the true path of our divine experiment with the Earth Goddess in actual interactivity and communication with her. And I call that interactivity with Gaia Sophia, planetary Tantra. It's just a name that I put on the practice of that interactivity and communication. And we stand now, as a species, on the threshold of planetary Tantra.
How so? Why now? What are the properties of this, John?
There are two particular reasons why planetary Tantra would be happening now and would be possible now. Three particular factors, actually. One of them is that we are coming to the end of a great cosmic cycle, which is the cycle of the precession of the zodiac. I'm sure you know what that is. Many of your speakers and interview people have talked about it.
That's right.
According to my calculation, which is based on the Dendera zodiac in correlation with other Maya, Aztec, and Hindu chronologies, the great cosmic clock of the zodiac, the great precessional cycle, ends in 2216. I choose that date because that's the date when the winter solstice aligns with the point toward the galactic center. The location of the winter solstice is currently about 2 or 2.5, 2 to 3 degrees offline from the galactic center. When the winter solstice aligns exactly with the galactic center, that is the 0 hour on the cosmic clock, as it was calculated in ancient times. And so it becomes possible in the last 200 years of this vast cycle of 26,000 years to make a tremendous leap and amplification in human experience and to actually recapitulate our past, see the errors of the past, jump beyond those errors and move into a period of rapid amplification and acceleration of human consciousness in these last 200 years, which are called technically Kali Yuga.
So John, this is, sorry to interrupt, but I want to ask you here.
Sure.
That means that this is connected then, in other words, to something physical, a cosmic alignment being the matter of our solar system, if you will, lining up with the center of the galaxy, correct?
This opportunity for planetary Tantra today, right now, and this opportunity for interactive magic with the planetary goddess is deeply physical. It is deeply physical in many ways. We're going to get into that through this conversation. I hope to be able to elucidate it for you. These anomalies that we're seeing are indications of the physical breakthrough into interactivity with Sophia. And so it's happening, first of all, I said there were three factors. One of them is that it's happening within a cosmic time frame. And the cosmic time frame doesn't guarantee that anything is going to happen. But in the last years of Kali Yuga, an ancient teaching says that in the last centuries of Kali Yuga, when we are living now, that is the time when humanity as a whole reaches its worst state of degeneration, absurdity, stupidity, violence, and oblivion.
And we sure can see it, John, when
And
we
we
look around.
sure are there. At the same time, because there's a double message about Kali Yuga. The other thing that the Mahanirvana Tantra says is that even though the great mass of humanity descends into degeneration, this is the time for the highest opportunity for spiritual development in the shortest period of time. And so this amplification, this opportunity for very rapid, fast track spiritual development and fast track acquisition of shamanic and magical powers by our species uniquely occurs in this timing. That's one reason as far as the cosmic time frame is concerned. So now let me see if I can give you very briefly what the other two reasons are. The other two reasons why it's happening now is, first of all, that humanity is organized in such a way psychically, the human being is organized in such a way psychically that we have had to go to the worst case scenario for our species before we could break into the secret of our divine experiment. This is not going to end in a nightmare. This is not going to end in a doomsday scenario. But we had to go to the point where it would almost be so, where that threat would actually be looming on the horizon in order to be in enough shock to be woken up. You know, Kali, who rules over this period of time, which is exceptional degeneration and exceptional advance, is the shock goddess. She awakens us by shock. And so we have to be shocked by the prospect of a nightmare of our own making in order to wake up and seize the true potential for this divine experiment. So that's another factor that's leading us to this moment. And then there's the third factor. And the third factor is Gaia herself. The living, animating, sublime, indwelling consciousness of this planet is like the consciousness of an animal. She's an animal. Think of Gaia as an animal. You know, Gaia is a name taken from science, from the Gaia hypothesis of Lynn Margulis and James Lovelock. And I've talked a lot about the Gaia hypothesis in my book, Not in His Image, because it's very compatible with the Gnostic vision of Sophia. Therefore, I coined this joint term, Gaia Sophia, to bring those two things together. Now, I want to point out that it would be a very good practice from here on, as well as thinking of the planet as a superorganism, which is what Lynn Margulis calls it, as well as realizing that the planet is alive, it's in a living being, it's not a dead lump of matter. Think of it as an animal. And I call that animal Pam. You can call her Pam if you want to. P-A-M, Planetary Animal Mother.
Right.
So call her Pam.
Pamela, Pam for short, yeah?
Yeah, Pam for short, right? Yeah. Call her Pam. Pam is waking up. Now, Pam is like a big, big lion. She's a very ferocious animal, very protective of her progeny. And this is the moment when Gaia awakens. That's why I called my framework for planetary tantra the terma of Gaia awakening. This is the moment when she awakens. And when she awakens to the plight of humanity, and we, humanity, awaken to our plight, and then to her presence as a living divine animal, then it's a whole new game. That is the shift. And the shift is now. I'm not talking, Henrik, about things that are going to happen here. In this whole interview, I'm not talking about things that are going to happen. I do not predict. I'm talking about what is happening. This is happening now. She is awakening, and she is making her awakened presence available to every single human being who can bring themselves to it. And planetary tantra is, and it's a very simple practice. It's not complicated. It's not hierarchical. It's not a new religion. It's not a cult. I'm not trying to start a cult. Planetary tantra is the simple practice by which each individual can bring themselves to her living presence and make this connection, one person at a time. And this is the great opportunity that is now unfolding.
Is this a window of opportunity, or is it kind of from now on and forward as we go?
It is a window that is open from now on. It's not a window that's going to close. It's like an aperture, Henrik. It's like the aperture of a lens opening to a portal for humanity to enter. And in that portal is the meeting with the goddess and the interactivity with the earth and the continuation, the restoration of the divine experiment according to her terms. Because she is a divine being who conceived the human species. This is what the Gnostic myth says. And so she also conceived a certain experiment for us. And when we can interact actually with her intelligence and know what that is, then we are really on the proper path for our species.
So we, humanity, are the progeny that you talked about earlier. Her protective tendencies, if you will, then are for us, John.
Well, for all species, she has a fiercely protective sense for all the living species of the earth, and she, if she sees them endangered, she will respond. But there is a particular role that we play. I've kind of taken a chance in my latest writings on metahistory or to say, well, let's call ourselves her pet species, okay? I've taken a chance. I just want to play with that. Don't take it too seriously, but I want to qualify that it doesn't mean that humanity, being the pet species of the goddess, is any better than any other of her species, whether they be beavers or bears or whales or beetles. But it means that we have some exceptional role in her dream, in her eonic divine plan for an experiment. We play some exceptional role. And so her protective tendencies are certainly very strong in regard to the human species. And she's coming out with measures and to protect us. And these are not things I've invented. These are things that I can describe, and everyone can verify them by their own experiences.
We do hold a different consciousness, obviously, than the animals do in one way or another. I mean, we could even see it when we look around. If nothing else, John, we can definitely see it because of our disconnection to many of the things. Unlike most of the animals and in nature, there's a whole different set of connectivity, if you will. But we can see through simple observation that we are separate or different from that.
Yeah, the disconnection is a disadvantage or a risk that we face because we carry exceptional faculties that other animals don't carry.
Right.
You see, when Sophia, acting from the pleromic center, engineered the human genome, the human genomic design, which is called the anthropos, she conceived it as possessing certain faculties, certain capacities, which are metanoia, dianoia, nous, epinoia, other faculties like this, which are noetic capacities of our species, intellectual capacities, which other animals don't have. One of them is obviously the capacity for language and for complex symbol systems. Another marked capacity of humanity, which makes us exceptional but not superior, is that we can extrapolate and plan and model things. Beavers can build a dam, and that takes a certain amount of beaver genius, and it's a marvelous thing. But we can build fantastic bridges. And in order to build a fantastic bridge, which beavers couldn't build, we have to preconceive that bridge and preconceive the steps of constructing it, right?
That's right.
Well, that is one of the gifts of our species. It's called modeling and then putting into application what we've modeled. But the problem with that, there's also a great drawback with that. And that is that we can model things and simulate things and get more interested in modeling than in reality. And we can get lost in our concepts and in our simulations. And the Gnostics warned about that, because when we get lost in our models and our simulations, when we get lost in playing with the tools, rather than in using them, we become subject to this archontic deviance, and that's when we really go off the track. So in a way, one of our highest gifts, which is language and symbol making and modeling, is also carries certain risks that other animals don't. Yeah,
that's right. It's the curse and the gift all kind of wrapped into one. Would this also explain, you think, aspects like our collective neurosis, our sense of trauma, hysteria, and even schizophrenia that mankind seem to suffer from, John?
Well, yeah. The basis of that largely is that when we make models, and when we make culture, and when we construct things abstractly, and we construct language systems, and we use codes, we become so fascinated with these that it subtly, over a period of time, takes our attention away from our source, which is nature. No matter what models we can build, there is no model superior to the models of nature itself.
That's right. I mean, all our inspiration comes from nature, pretty much, when it comes to
the zipper. But unfortunately, yeah, it should. But unfortunately, a lot of it leads us away from nature into a self-referential maze of our own thinking and of our own abstraction. And when that happens, we do become insecure, paranoid, and erotic because we have lost contact with our source. We've lost contact with the source of life, which is the planet, not just the physical planet, but the living and divine intelligence of the planet. And so we've lost our way, and we wander into narcissism, and then we wander into psychosis, and this is basically where we go. We can't go much further in that direction.
That's right. So how do we tie this together a little bit then, John? The concept here, obviously. Oh, wait, there was one more thing I want to ask you about, actually.
Sure.
It had to do with the mythology, if you will, then, of the Sophia myth. Why
Sure. Basically
it was left open-ended, and if that was for a reason, because that obviously makes it very different than other mythologies out there. You could even argue that it falls into a different category than a mythology, then, in one sense.
Oh, it's not only in a different category, it's incomparable. The Sophia myth is incomparable for two reasons, and I've often pointed this out. First of all, because it is the only complete, coherent myth we have that describes our origin as a human species and the evolution of the earth, the conditions of the solar system, and many, many other things. It is the myth for our species, just as each tribe, indigenous tribes in Australia or Africa or the Arctic, each had a myth of origin for that tribe. The human species has its myth of origin, and this is it. So it's of paramount importance. And second of all, it's left open-ended, which makes it a participatory myth, technically speaking. And the reason why it's left open-ended by the Gnostics is, first of all, because they did not invent this myth as a mind programming tool, as certain myths have been invented for that purpose. For instance, the myth of the Messiah, the myth of the chosen people, are toxic myths of human invention that have been introduced as mind programming tools. Absolutely on the contrary, the Sophianic myth is a mind-liberating vision story. And it's left open so that we can participate in it, and also it's left open because, in fact, they didn't know how it was going to end. They set us into a story. They put us into a story. And where we are now today, when we come into the Sophia myth today, we come to the story realizing that it's reached its critical point and that we are involved in the solution of the divine Sophia. We are involved in her correction. These anomalies that we're seeing in the sky, these anomalies, astronomical anomalies, the length of the day, the setting of the sun, weird, powerful rumblings and inexplicable sounds coming from the interior of the earth, vortexes appearing in the ocean, huge vortexes appearing off in the Caribbean Ocean.
Yeah.
I could name more. You could name more than I, because I think you carry them often on your news features.
That's right. Sinkholes and the spirals in the sky, and what the heck is all that about?
That's right. I'm not saying that I can explain all these anomalies, But I am suggesting that if we take the Sophia myth and we bring it right up to the current moment, and we say, okay, Sophia is a name for the divine being from the cosmic center who turned into the earth. So she is the wisdom goddess, the earth goddess, and she's alive, and she is now taking the earth on its own course in interstellar space. It's very important when we contemplate the Sophia myth to put it in an astronomical perspective, because it is an astronomical myth. It's a story about something that happened in this galaxy and how the solar system and the Earth rose. Now, we currently know, based on what science tells us, that the Earth belongs to a planetary system that is orbiting around a sun, and this entire planetary system, rather like a fleet of ships, if you will, is sailing along upstream in the third arm of a four-armed lenticular spiral galaxy. Now, everyone can have this picture, can form this simple picture. When you form this picture, you have the actual setting of the Sophia mythos. And what is happening today with these anomalies, I'm starting to work with a group of people who are collecting observations on these anomalies. And as they send them in to me, I'm attempting to use my understanding of astronomy combined with this myth to explain what these anomalies are, by way of saying, up until now, up until Sophia's correction, the planet Earth was captured in the solar system. Gnostic cosmology teaches us this. I think I've mentioned this before in our previous interview. Gnostic cosmology teaches us a remarkable fact, that the planet Earth is an organic body captured in an inorganic system. None of the other planets in the solar system, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, contain organic life in large creature forms, in large animal forms. There may be microbial forms of life on those planets. They don't contain life in the form that it is on the Earth. So the picture is that the Earth is an organic body captured in this inorganic celestial mechanics. The correction of Sophia is an actual astronomical event. And I couldn't talk about it until now. You know, many people asked me when my book came out, many people who got the Sophia myth and learned it, read the 9 episodes, came to me with a question, and they said, well, John, like, what's happening in the 9th episode? We're in the 9th episode. Sophia's correction is supposed to happen, and how is that going to happen? And I didn't tell them any answer because I didn't know. And now I realize that I was acting from a deep instinct, a deep gut intuition, by not answering that question, by not even trying to answer it. Because the wonderful reality here is that the correction of Sophia can only be known in the moment it's happening. And that moment is now. And these anomalies are indications that the Earth is beginning to move as a self-propelling, self-directing material globe.
Out through the inorganic system that we're trapped in.
That's right. It doesn't mean that it's moving out of the organic system, although that's possible, the inorganic system. Want to give this picture as clearly as possible. I want to be very rigorously careful. Imagine again, I use this nautical metaphor. I want to talk more about it, and perhaps in the second session we can really go into it. I'm using a nautical metaphor here to help picture what's actually happening. If you imagine the solar system as a fleet of ships, and don't even think of the sun as another ship. Think of the sun as a huge eddy. It's a huge spiraling vortex or eddy. And this eddy is moving down the stream of the galactic arm, okay? You know how when you're standing by a river or even by a little creek sometime, and you're looking at the surface of the water, you can see that there are eddies in the water.
Right.
and they travel along down the stream, and they keep their form, don't they?
They do, yeah.
Imagine that the sun is a vast eddy of solar plasmic energy, and that the planetary system is moving around it in such a way that the whole collection draws itself into a spiral, because the solar system is not flat. The eddy is moving, and so the orbits of the planets are drawn into spirals. And that is the motion to visualize of the fleet of these planets. Now, up until now, the Earth, which is a member of this fleet of planets, has more or less followed the general laws. It has been in formation with the fleet. What it's doing now is taking its own course. And I believe that I can prove that to be so. And not only can I prove it to be so, I can show in specific detail regarding the observations that are being made as to why the sun would appear for instance, why would the sun appear to be setting more hard north? Well, that is because of a certain movement that the Earth is making independent of the whole rest of the solar system. Now, it's true that science, hard science, would say, well, this is impossible. It's impossible for the Earth to do anything other than what it can do if it's locked in the celestial mechanics of our solar system, right?
Right.
But I don't care about science if it doesn't fit the evidence.
That's right.
You know? And I would have to say that these anomalies that we're seeing, Henrik, I'm sure there are much more of them that are even reported to you and reported on YouTube. Many more. And I expect that we're going to see increasing anomalies. And I also expect that we are due to see staggering anomalies. Anomalies that stop people in the street and leave them with their jaw hanging open. And science will not be able to explain these anomalies within the current paradigm of astronomy. But if we follow the journey of the Earth, and I have techniques for following it and charting it, through the stars, through the intergalactic space, where it's sailing, these anomalies can actually tell us what the mothership is doing. I call it the mothership. What the mothership is doing, how she's actually turning her course, where she's turning her course, what stars she is using to navigate by. It's down to that detail. And this is what I'm doing now in my little crew notes and in my little navigational experiment that I'm conducting with some people.
Really interesting. It's like, reminds me of, we have an author here in Sweden called Harry Martinsson. He wrote a story called Aniara about this spaceship, basically, that people are on, and it kind of reminds me of this story a little bit. That's a wonderful story. But where is it? I'm still trying to grasp this idea of where it is going. Maybe it is not a physical location per se, but how, if it is a traveling in somewhere else, so to speak, where... Okay,
where is the Earth going? The
right.
Earth, let's say, using the nautical metaphor, if we want to understand Sophia's correction, I'm proposing that the best tool to use is a nautical metaphor. Now, it's a very interesting metaphor. It's not just the metaphor. If I say the Earth is a mothership sailing through the starry seas, well, that's a metaphor, isn't it? I mean, if you look at the language, it's a metaphor. But as a matter of fact, that metaphor is a literal description of what the Earth is doing.
That's right.
And it's just as good as saying the Earth is a planet moving through interstellar space. Well, that's also a metaphor. Excuse me, you know? So I'm saying let's use a metaphor that we can participate in. So we're passengers on a mothership sailing through interstellar space. And on the navigational deck, which is where I stand, we can actually understand and chart the journey. For instance, how does it happen that I can say that the Earth is starting to assume its own proper self-propelled, get that, by the way, self-propelled motion, moving slightly in relation to the solar system. It's not necessarily at first going to move out of the solar system, but it's going to assume its own discernible, detectable motion within the solar system. And that is going to cause enormous astronomical and geophysical anomalies. So where is it going? We're on a journey on the mothership. She's taking her own course now, and she's going actually back home. We're all going home. What is home? Well, according to the Sophianic myth, home is the galactic center. So we're all going back to the galactic center, but we're going back on a long, slow boat to China. In other words, we don't go back by zipping right over into the galactic center. We go back by sailing up the big, big lazy river of the galactic arm. And the sun, it is said, to sail is said to move around the galactic center. As you know, the sun and solar system is said to move around the galactic center so every so many billion years. Well, try to picture this, that the sun and the earth and the planets are moving around the galactic center. And each time they make a full circle, they move a little bit more inward toward the galactic center. It's like a closing spiral. And so if you want to visualize astronomically and poetically Sophia's journey as the planet Earth, it's a journey around the galactic center, but moving more and more in and returning homeward, because she comes from the galactic center. She is the being indwelling the Earth is an aeon or divine energy from the galactic center. And we can actually plot the way that she is moving through the stars and moving in relation to the galactic center. This can actually be plotted. And I'm showing how to do that. And by that plotting, we can understand how and why these anomalies are taking place. Give you one example, okay? I realize this is very wild, but I'll give you one example. One of the first anomalies that was noticed, which I picked up myself, and you have noticed also from these reports, is just in our face, is, well, the sun is not rising at the same angle anymore. It's amateur astronomers and kids of the age of 10 years old have noticed that it's rising very hard to the north. Seems to be further north than it ought to be. How can I explain that anomaly in terms of the Gaia's taking a new course? The planet is taking a new course. Well, it's my understanding that the Earth is in the galactic arm, and you know the galactic arm, the spiral arm, is a river of stars, but she's not sailing on top of the river of stars. She's sailing in the river of stars. And sometimes she can go deeper in the river of stars, that is, she can go down, and sometimes she can go up in the river of stars. Do you follow that picture?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Okay? It's my understanding that in taking her new course, Gaia is using the star Canopus, which is in the constellation of Argo in the southern hemisphere. It's the second brightest star in the sky after Sirius. That she is using the star Canopus as a sort of a lighthouse or sighting point to set her new course. And the star Canopus is deep in the southern skies. And so if she is setting a course, you can imagine that she is, in a sense, dipping slightly down into the southern skies, dipping slightly into the star stream. And the result of that would be to make the north, the rising of the sun, appear further to the north, because she's dipping to the south. It would make the axial orientation to the north appear more extreme. It doesn't really change, but it appears to, and the appearance of the anomaly is real. That's the amazing thing. You can observe it. But you can't explain it by ordinary astronomy. So that's one example. I don't know if how that comes across.
Well, let me, as a furtherance point to that, let me just read you a little bit here, John, because I'm recalling this in terms of planets here out in space. June 29, 2001. Astronomers using NASA's Hubble Space Telescope have spotted something extraordinary. Apparently, there are planet-sized objects wandering through a distant globular cluster of stars. Unlike the planets in our own solar system, however, these objects are loners. They have no central star of their own. Because of the findings are so surprising, researchers caution that they must be confirmed by follow-up observations. But if this discovery is verified, it could change the way astronomers think about stars and planets and how the two are related. And then we zoom forward here into 2011.
Listen, I'm so happy that you read that, because I also came across that article. And let's put it this way: when I first started teaching the Sophia myth and sharing this fantastic story, I said that it was about astronomy, and literally about astronomy and the Earth, and I brought up the outrageous point that the Earth is an organic body captured in a planetary system. And at the time I brought that up, I shook my head, and I said, "Boss, nobody's going to believe me. This is just too outrageous." Well, here you go. Now science says that there can be such thing as free-floating planets. So if there can be free-floating planets in the spiral arms of the galaxy, then there can be a possible scenario of a free-floating planet being captured into a planetary system.
Absolutely.
And that's right. And if the Gnostic seers were right, and I strongly believe they were, because they worked in teams, and they were trained clairvoyants and trained observers of the universe, trained shamans, if they were right, then this is actually what happened to the Earth. This is actually how our solar system came about. And one of the lines that is you find in the Gospel of Philip of Nag Hammadi says, "The world as we know it," that is to say, the world system we inhabit, came about by a mistake, or anomu, an anomaly. What is that anomaly? The anomaly is that the Earth is a profoundly alive organic planet captured in a more or less inorganic system. So there you go. That is a kind of confirmation. And not only that, but I would point out that the very fact that scientists have been able to observe these new remarkable mist clouds and these new these free-floating planets is due to the fact that the planet Earth is slightly breaking away into its own course. And as it does so, it's going to move in a way that takes it out of the paradigm of the solar system. It's going to take, and the paradigm of the solar system has a kind of control on our perception. The paradigm of the solar system, of the planetary spheres, is an archontic matrix. We don't really live in that archontic matrix, but we can be captured in it. And as we break out of the archontic matrix, we're going to see fantastic things in the cosmic environment. It's like a journey where suddenly we're standing on the deck of the great ocean liner. We're getting up out of the cabins. We're putting away our magazines, turning off our telephones, turning off our iPads, getting up on the deck. And look at what we're seeing. Look at the islands that we're passing. Look at the shipwrecks over here on the right and the left. Look at all these fantastic things, because we are actually on a voyage with her. And the entire perception of the human species, of its place on Earth, can rapidly and radically change as this voyage proceeds.
It's really interesting too, because I wanted to bring up that point, John, about the fact that the first story I read there was back from 2001, and they were looking for confirmation. And then just fast forwarding slightly here into 2011, as recently as May 18th, when the scientists have now confirmed this phenomena and actually estimate that there could be as many as 400 billion wandering planets in the Milky Way alone.
There you go, in the Milky Way alone. And we are in the Milky Way. The Milky Way is the name we give to the visible edge of the spiral arm where the solar system is embedded. The visible edge of it. It's not the entire spiral arm. It's only about 3% of it. Now just imagine what we don't see in the spiral arm if we only see 3% of it with the naked eye. And so science will be discovering things as Gaia corrects her course, as the mothership takes her own course in interstellar space. And we, as people standing on the deck, as passengers and crew, are actually going to be seeing these things. And there's nothing to be afraid of. It's not about planets and comets going to come and crash onto the Earth and destroy it. It's about awakening to a fantastic journey with the planet.
It's interesting. Then we have been looking for Planet X and Nibiru, what have you, John, and it seems what if we are becoming it, if you know what I mean? We're becoming one of those strange planet that has either a weird, orbit ourselves, or actually, going to travel through other systems, if you will, much in the same way that we get stories about that we've had a visitor as well. Pretty interesting, isn't it?
I've often thought that many of the things that we're looking for and expecting from outer space are actually going to come from the Earth itself. We may not be on planet X, but we're definitely on planet S, and that would be S for Sophia.
That's right. So let's just, before we wrap things up for the first hour, John, because we're going to carry on talking with you obviously here, but okay, let's just take the hard edge scientific stuff that comes with this, if you will. Then, how could we make a journey like this without a companion star to heat us up on the way, and furthermore, cosmic radiation? There are a number of things we hear about, of course, which is dangerous out there, right, in the cosmos.
That's right. Well, I want to restate the point that I just made. The Gnostics were very subtle teachers and had a profound grasp of the relationship between physical reality and mental projections of reality. They were noetic scientists of an unsurpassable level of finesse, in my opinion. And one of the things that they pointed out, which is one of the more difficult parts of their teaching to understand, but extremely valuable when you do understand it, is that any physical system, like the solar system, any physical or astronomical structure carries with it a mental paradigm. And if you change the mental paradigm associated with that structure, you change the structure itself. So what's happening to us is not only are there going to be astronomical and geophysical changes as the Earth assumes her own proper course in interstellar space, but there are going to be mental and psychological changes in our species. And the biggest change, which is ongoing right now, is that the entire archontic faults matrix falls away. It just literally disintegrates. And part of that archontic faults matrix, it has many dimensions, as you know. It's what people call the mind control system on this Earth. It's what people call prison planet. It's what people call the matrix. Okay?
Yeah.
Part of that faults archontic matrix consists of scientific knowledge, which is, quite frankly, wrong and false. If you look on YouTube now, you can spend 2 or 3 days, and it's very well worth it, to make an education for yourself. Go and look at the people who are telling you that Einstein was wrong and explaining how. Go and look at the people who are telling you, teaching plasma cosmology and the electric universe, who are saying that the whole idea that gravity rules the universe is completely wrong. In so many ways, I don't want to take up the time to enumerate them, but in so many ways, the accepted scientific paradigms, this is the way it is, this is the way it works, are simply wrong. And they are going to fall apart. Because at the same time that the astronomical event of correction occurs, there is an enormous correction in the human mind simultaneously. And one of the beautiful and fantastic opportunities of this correction, and let's talk about this in the second part, is the breakthrough to free energy systems.
That's right.
Yeah. We are on the threshold of the breakthrough to free energy systems. In fact, there's only one thing that stands in the way of it, and that is due to go down very fast and very hard. I'm not making predictions here. And so that free energy systems is the true dynamics of the universe. Why wouldn't it be the true dynamics of planets as well? If Gaia, you could say, could realize her own ability as a free energy system, who says that she needs to be in a planetary system in order to carry on her journey? We don't know, but we can't rule out the possibility.
I've always seen the scientific field in many regards, John, as being a prominent construct of control in that sense, if you will. It has, in a tremendous, effective way, limited the way that humanity has been able to use their creativity, their imagination, think outside of the box, if you will, as well. And it seems we've been on this path all the time of actually limiting our knowledge. We think we end up knowing more and more about stuff, but as being showing every day, there's more and more mysteries opening up to us every day because of our observations that are, in that regard, rightly so, propelled by the scientific field, us looking out into space, trying to understand gravity and what holds the particles together, etc. But at the same time, our sense of magic, our sense of wonder and fantasy, if you will, have been slashed, cut, disintegrated because of the fact that we've been limited in the way we think. And obviously the big part of this is the indoctrination system that most people on this planet unfortunately goes through in their younger years and actually limit everything that has to do with imagination or possibility, basically.
Absolutely correct. Science, the accepted forms of science and these master theories like quantum theory, string theory, relativity is just total crap when you really look into it. And it has really crippled our ability to actually perceive the real dynamics of the universe. And this has happened for over 150 years now. Science and physics got really off the track in the 18th century. And science basically today has become nothing but a mathematical game. Doesn't really allow us to perceive the true dynamics of the universe or nature or interact with it. But that is changing as we speak. And true science and true magic are not incompatible, They're not incompatible at all. And when we get to true science, when these false paradigms like quantum theory and string theory crumble because the evidence overwhelms them, when we get to true science, we shall also be in true magic. And that is where we want to be as a species, because that is what the divine experiment offers for us. It offers for us to realize our highest capacity by an understanding of physical and natural laws to the level of magic. And you're absolutely right, Henrik. Imagination plays an enormous role in how we reach that point.
Absolutely. Let's talk more about it, John, here then, as we carry on and continue with this wonderful and very, very interesting conversation together with you, John Lash. And we want to mention your website here, of course, as well, for people out there who want to check out your work and follow you more on a regular basis. You do have updates, obviously, regularly on metahistory.org. People can follow your work there. You're also the author, of course, of the excellent book, Not in His Image. There's a few DVDs out there as well. I think Jay Widener did one with you a while back here as well, right? So tell us a bit about your website, John.
Yeah, the website is metahistory.org. It's a teaching site. It's educational. And my whole process of presenting and transmitting the Sophianic vision of the Gnostics and developing planetary Tantra with people is a completely free, educational, nonprofit event. I don't make any money off it. I don't do seminars. I don't charge anything. And so the site is there as an open source for information. And recently, if you go to the homepage of Metahistory, you'll also find that recently there have been 3 recorded narrations of the Sophianic vision story, the Sophia mythos. And I want to thank the people who provided those narrations, Thomas Malone, Stephanie Ainsworth, and Terry Stevenson. They're beautiful, beautiful narrations, so you can listen to the story as well as read the story. And that's on metahistory.org. Just go to the homepage and you'll find the links.